And here again, Ben repeats, send them back to the Stone Age. I'm sorry, did women have liberation in the Stone Age? Is that when
Stone
everyone
Age
gets
is
to
not
take their
having
burqas
electricity.
off?
I said that earlier. But Dave, I don't mind the debate, but I said it earlier.
Does that lead
that
to,
means not
right, I know,
having
but, and that leads
electricity.
Right.
That has
So,
nothing to do with women's
yes, I
rights.
understand.
Yeah, but sorry, hang on.
I'm sorry, we said we're not going to interrupt.
Let me just say on that point, Ben.
Well, that's war against the civilian population.
Well, Dave,
Dave Smith returns for part 2 to the Piers Morgan show, but where's Adam? Let's get into the clip and I'll save my commentary for the end.
Of that, a word on the elephant not in the room. A couple of weeks ago, we hosted a debate between Dave Smith, familiar face to our viewers, and Adam Sosnick, part of the PBD podcast crew and an uncensored debutante. It's fair to say that most people, including PBD's many fans and followers, did not think it went well for Adam. Patrick Bet-David himself took the extraordinary step of dispensing some stewardly on-air advice to Adam about his ability to represent their brand.
Obviously, the market has responded.
Despite what you think, I haven't listened or watched any of the internet comments. Zero.
You.
I don't go onto Twitter. I don't check the comments. It's just not something that I do. Some people are messaging me on my neck. What do you think? I don't know. People are saying stuff, and I'm listening to a song called "Ain't Nothing Gonna Break My Stride, Ain't Nothing Gonna Slow Me Down," and that's how I feel about this.
I've seen you make better arguments with Bassem Youssef than you did with Dave Smith. I didn't see you making arguments on Dave Smith. And the reason why I'm doing this with you openly, and I'm talking to you openly with you, is there's an element of also representing where you're coming from, where the expectation is, hey, when you go and be professionals, that's not how I handle debates. I don't handle debates that way. That's not my MO. So if you're close to me and you're handling it that way, that is not my style.
Well, at the end of that debate, Vinny Oshana, another familiar face to our viewers, concluded that Adam had only one option: to save face and the PBD team's reputation, and to burnish his debating credentials, he must face a rematch.
People are like, he's on cocaine. I read the comments because I want to know what the temperature is. You have the arsenal. You had the ammunition. You had this big-ass arsenal, and you just used a pistol. You were just like kind of going after and doing personal. And I was disappointed because I was like, yo, you have it. You have it. You didn't use it. And this is my attitude. When I was young and I'd get my ass whooped, my mom would be like, you're going to go outside and you're going to fight that guy right now. You're not going to sit here and let it fester. I know that you're going to do it. You have to debate him again.
Now, I've got to say that before I say anything more, I really respect the PBD podcast crew, led by Patrick, for doing that debate about the debate we had on this show. Most people wouldn't do that. So full credit for them for having that kind of in-house debate and for being brutally honest with each other. But of course, following that discussion, we, of course, offered to host a new debate between Dave Smith and between Adam Sosnick. Adam initially agreed, but then claimed that ultimately he'd been overwhelmed by competing diary events. Well, and just maybe the very powerful human instinct for self-preservation, only he knows. It was Dave Smith's clash with Ben Ferguson 6 weeks ago, part of a much wider panel, which spiraled into that enormous hissy fit from Ben Shapiro and teed up the Sosnick debate in the first place. And since Ben Ferguson never ducks a challenge, he has manfully stepped in to fill Adam's empty chair for what will actually probably be a better debate. So joining me now is host of Part of the Problem, Dave Smith, up against Ben Ferguson, co-host of The Verdict with Ted Cruz. Welcome to both of you. Thank you, Ben, for stepping into the breach. First of all, Dave, I mean, welcome back, obviously, but, you know, Adam was going to come on for the rematch and then has suddenly found a series of scheduling issues and conflicts, which from where I come, could be probably best described as bottling it. What do you feel about
Piers, I just want you to know, I cancel things to come on your show.
Okay? And I love that about you, Ben Ferguson. And I always say to my team,
I had something today, and then you said Dave and you, and I said, I'm here. I'm here for you, my friend.
You know what, Ben? You and I go back, honestly, we go back to about 2010 doing this, and you've never bottled a debate in your life, and I love that about you. And thank you for stepping into the breach. But Dave, first of all, Adam's decision not to have the rematch. What is your view of that?
Well, I mean, I told your people when they reached out to mine to be like, hey, we want to do this. I go, I don't really think this makes sense to do this rematch. By the way, I agree with you. I love Patrick Bet-David and Vinny and Tom. I got nothing but respect for those guys. I did think that was cool that they did it. Yeah. And I thought they did it in a cool way where they weren't like, Pat was bending over backward to not throw Adam under the bus, but to try to kind of give him a chance to go, hey, what'd you learn from that or whatever? And I was I was pretty annoyed by the fact that he just took that opportunity to take more shots at me. Look, I don't know what Adam was thinking approaching the debate that way. I don't know why he thought that would go any other way than the way it did. In his defense, I will say, pretty good tune.
Well, he's not here. I wish he was here because we could have just put it to bed. I don't think it would have gone much better for him. I think the first debate revealed that he's not that good at it, if I'm honest. Like him personally, they've always been very good to me, that team. I think if Patrick had come on, or Vinny actually, it would have been probably a better tussle. But you've got Ben Ferguson here, who you've tussled with before. Ben, welcome back, as I said. Just one rule, because there aren't like 5 people on a panel here all squabbling.
Yeah, we can have a real conversation today.
Well, that's the point. And I think the one rule I'd like to try and keep to is let's not have too much interrupting. Let's let each other speak. Let's have a proper debate about what is actually a really interesting debate, I think. And it all stemmed from something that Dave Smith on this show said about the United States being, well, let's listen to it.
The IDF is the worst terrorist organization in the region. Let's get real. The United States of America is arguably the worst terrorist organization in the world. If you want to look over the last 25 years, how many innocent civilians we've slaughtered. You're getting us into the neocon. Yeah, that's right. You're getting us into the neocon 7th war, which they've been dying for the last 25 years.
Now, as a consequence of that, all hell broke loose, obviously, online. And Ben Shapiro said about Dave, I'm sorry, but you hate the country if you say America is the worst terrorist organization in the world. You just do. And Dave has since responded to that on this show. But Ben, let's just get you to, because Dave's already explained what he meant about this.
Yeah.
And many people agree with it, right? And, you know, just to prep you up for this, you're about to defend the charge that America is not the world's worst terrorist organization within hours of Donald Trump posting to the world that a whole civilization will die tonight, never to be brought back again. But in the context of the words coming from the President of the United States, quite hard to argue that that is in itself, those words are not the words you would normally associate with the leader of a terrorist organization.
Yeah, look, I think 2 things about what the president said there. He's clearly talking to the leadership in Iran, and he's saying that you are going to destroy your people by not opening the Strait of Hormuz. I'm not screwing around. This goes back to FAFO. The president of the United States of America is using the same foreign policy that Hillary Clinton used, that Bill Clinton used, that Jimmy Carter used, and that Barack Obama
When did any of them threaten, Ben? When did any of them threaten?
Let me finish the point I'm going to make there real quick, because it's important. Right. This president, the only difference between his foreign policy with Iran and the other Democrats I mentioned was they all said that they couldn't get a nuclear weapon. And Donald Trump said, I am actually agreeing with you and I'm going to do it. I'm going to stop them. And you cannot be a terrorist to the world while Donald Trump is the president of the United States of America, shut down shipping lanes you have no right to shut down and expect that there be no consequences. The president doesn't bluff. And so when he puts that out, I think he's had about enough of this. I think he's had about enough of the fact that Iran, even after we go and kill their first level, their second level, their third level, and their fourth level of people, they're still not giving in. He's like, okay, you guys want to play this game, FAFO, and I'm going to act, which is exactly, by the way, why I voted for him.
But just before I go back to Dave to respond to that, explain to me the difference between the belief that Donald Trump has about Iran, that they want death to America, death to all Americans. That's why they want a nuclear weapon. And if they get one, they will kill millions of Americans, which is why America has to stop them. And the president of the United States saying he wants to wipe out an entire civilization in one night, which can only be done with nuclear weapons or weapons of that power.
Well,
so look, as I say, look, I don't think he's going to do that. But he has said he's going to do that. Many people think he's already committed a war crime in signaling his intention to do that. But that's for another day. But my point is, what is the difference in terms of language between the head of Al-Qaeda, say bin Laden, saying wanting to wipe out millions of Americans, or Iran wanting to do that, and America wanting to do that? I mean, that would be Dave's point, I'm sure, in a moment. But before we go to him, what is the difference?
Well, look, I think the president here is a guy that always pushes the limit on what he's saying, especially when he's dealing with bad guys, whether it was in Venezuela, whether it's narco terrorists, or whether it's the Ayatollah and those that are in charge right now in Iran. Do I think he's going to indiscriminately kill a bunch of people? Of course not. Do I think that's the intent of the tweet? Of course not. If you've talked to the president and you know what he says here, you can either just try to hit him on that and score political points, or you can look at what the president has done so far. He has been incredibly surgical with the strikes that he's had. He's not been going after and just bombing. I'll go to an example that I think Dave used on this show, saying Israel is just bombing all these buildings in Gaza, for example. That's not what the president's done here at all. The president has been very surgical in using our military. I have no doubt that that's what he's going to do here. And what he's saying is, if I go after your electrical grid, you literally are going back to the Stone Ages when there was no electricity. So if you want to hit the president political points to win a political argument, fine, do that. But what the president's saying in that tweet, I think, is directly to the leadership in Iran and telling them, I'm not screwing around. This is going to be very bad for you. Open up the Strait of Hormuz and do it immediately. We can have a ceasefire. You guys have been talking to us for a while now. You know how to do stall and delay tactics. This is a deadline. This is a red line. By the way, other presidents have given red lines before. They just don't back them up. This president does. Barack Obama didn't back up his red line multiple times on foreign policy issues, including when chemical weapons were used.
Well, that is true. Yeah, that is true. But Dave Smith, let me come to you. I mean, my big problem with this is, like I say, this will be airing after that deadline has passed. And my guess is the Iranians will not concede in the way that Trump wants them to before this deadline. Maybe I'm wrong, and maybe they will, but I don't think they will. And therefore, they'll call his bluff to a degree, and Trump will not then go through with what he vowed to do, which is wipe out the entire Iranian population. And then he becomes, the emperor with no clothes to a degree, the boy who cried wolf. It's like there's a danger in that as well, in the president of the world's greatest military not doing what he says he would do if X, Y, Z doesn't happen.
Well, okay, so let me say, first of all, there's just this obvious contradiction in what Ben just said there, which is that on one hand, he's saying the president doesn't bluff. He draws a red line and he sticks to it. And then on the other hand, saying, that's just Donald Trump. He talks crazy like this. And you're just trying to win a cheap political argument if you look at what he's literally saying. It can't be both of those things now, can it? If he doesn't bluff, then Donald Trump has promised to send them back to the Stone Age, that it will be the end of the civilization, never to be recovered, and that presumably starting tonight hits their bridge and power plant days. Okay, yes. So if he doesn't, Right. So remember the non-interrupting rule. So if he's either bluffing or he's not bluffing here. Now, obviously, it does bode well for this particular political argument that sparked off on your show a few weeks ago, that now Donald Trump is making these threats. But the position Ben's in here, it's almost like being the White House press secretary. If we were talking last week and I had said, Donald Trump's going to say this, you would have been like, no, he's not. No one's saying that. This is ridiculous. But now he's said it. So now you have to defend how he doesn't bluff, but also he doesn't really mean what he said. Look, Piers, I don't know. I hope you're right. But all the indications here are that tonight's 8 p.m. deadline is going to come and go without the Iranians capitulating. And so Donald Trump has really put all his chips in on the center of the table here. So to the dynamic you just laid out, he's now painted himself into this corner for absolutely no reason. He's painted himself into this corner where he's either got to do something huge or, as you said, be exposed as just being a complete bluffer, not having a real red line.
Hang on, Ben. My guess is he'll say, you know what, we're getting somewhere with the Iranians. The new leaders want to do a deal, so we're going to give them a bit more time, which is what he's been doing throughout this war. And Ben, the trouble with doing that is if you keep doing that, but the Iranians keep saying, no, we're not talking to you. What are you talking about? And they keep the Straits of Hormuz shut, and they carry on firing weapons at their Gulf neighbors, and they carry on exactly what they're doing. And then you have Pete Hegseth saying, we've got total air dominance, and right until one of our fighter planes gets shot down, and we have to send in $300 million worth of rescue mission to get the pilots out. That doesn't say to me that all these defenses have been destroyed, does it?
Piers, we have total air dominance over the country and hitting one of our planes. Yeah, when you're throwing a lot of stuff up in the air, going after airplanes, there is a very good chance you'll be able to get one. That's why it's called war. No one said that they would never touch one of our airplanes. Go find that quote. It doesn't exist. But the fact that we have total dominance over the airspace is proof. The fact that we were able to go in there with helicopters and do real search and rescue missions and bring them home. By the way, some of those helicopters also got shot at from the ground, some of them with AK-47s from the ground. That doesn't mean that it's totally perfect. In Venezuela, we had total air superiority there. We also had one of the guys that was flying one of the helicopters get shot from the ground. It's called war. The idea that like people aren't going to get hit or things aren't going to get hit or equipment aren't going to get hit, that's a video game. That's absurd. That is not what the president's saying. That's not what the Pentagon is saying. When you have total air dominance, it means you can do and hit what you want to 99.9% of the time, and they're not coming back after you. They don't have radar systems. We've taken them out. We're able to pretty much fly freely over that country and hit targets that we want to hit. And so I think what you're saying is basically you're trying to make it a lot worse than it is. Dave said on the last show, and I was watching it earlier as I was prepping for this, that this is a quagmire. If you go, and this is the part where I say it's like rooting against America. The definition of a quagmire, if you ask social media, is a little different than if you actually look up the definition or you ask AI. A quagmire is years. A quagmire is 2+ years if you look at how they teach it in military schools. This isn't coming from me. This is if you go to West Point, they say if you are bogged down in a war and you are losing or stagnant, they use Vietnam as an example of that. They use the never-ending war in Afghanistan as another example. The word quagmire starts being used after years. We're talking weeks into this thing, like 2 months in. We're talking about the fact that we've taken out, and you say, well, the president's got a problem here, and they don't believe him. You've taken out their top leader, then their replacement, then their replacement, then their replacement. You've taken out their air superiority. You've taken out their Navy. Like, you guys, I'm sorry, like the idea that this is a quagmire or is not successful, and well, they won't believe the president if he bluffs on this one. Call the last 4 dead guys that were the leader of Iran and tell me they don't believe President Trump.
Why, if the United States has such incredible, overwhelming military success in this war so far, why are the Straits of Hormuz still shut?
Because I think if you look at the issue there, number one, you're dealing with international issues there. And number two, you're also dealing with the fact that it is a waterway. And if you can't just like go in there and bomb the hell out of it and then expect the ships to come through. It has to be orderly. 3, if you talk to maritime individuals, specifically those that deal with insurance, I did about an hour-and-a-half phone call saying, teach me everything. It has to be a safe place or you cannot get the insurance. The last thing you do is go in there militarily because then nobody will insure any of these boats at all. So therefore, they will not come through the Strait of Hormuz because they can't get the insurance policy they need for the maritime movement of those boats. Like, some of this is not that complicated. You just need to ask questions.
Okay, before I go to Dave, just be very clear with me in your head what victory looks like. At what point can the Americans, Donald Trump, claim victory and leave?
To me or Dave?
To you, before I go to Dave.
Oh, to me.
Yeah.
I think there's 2 different definitions here of victory. I think there's the clear victory, which Trump talked about from the very beginning, and all past Democratic presidents since 1979. Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. That is my first definition of victory. If we have Iran that has been pushed back to the Stone Ages and they're nowhere close to enriching their uranium at 60+%, and that we know that we are safe from a nuclear Iran and a dirty bomb, they've clearly said over and over again, death to America. We know that's their intent. They've been saying it for 40+ years. That is my definition of victory. A bonus on top of that, a tier 2 victory, which I think the media has already made this the new standard, which I disagree with fundamentally, is that there is regime change. The president's made it clear he would love for there to be regime change. And by the way, there has been. We've killed their top 4 guys. So that's 4x regime change, in my opinion. If 4 people that were in charge are no longer in charge, that's pretty good. Would I love for the people in Iran to be able to take over and have genuine freedom? Yes. Is that what I consider a victory? No. That is a bonus. All I care about is that Iran doesn't have a nuclear weapon and they're not killing more men and women in uniform. They've killed more men and women in uniform from America than any other country in my lifetime. I want that threat off the table. That's my definition of victory, no doubt about it.
Dave Smith, your response.
Well, I mean, again, just as is almost always the case with war propaganda, it's just the contradictions are just everywhere around you. It's like my secondary. I was about to. My secondary goal is regime change, but there's already been regime change in this war, but it's not a war. But we've always been at war for 47 years.
Always said it's a
I mean,
war.
Piers. Okay, buddy. Yeah. Okay. Well, you say it's a war. The administration won't admit that because it's totally illegal if it is. Even Donald Trump himself said we can't call it a war for legal reasons. But yes, of course, it is a war. But I mean, Piers, if you just think about how many people, and I got to say, particularly, I'm stunned by the Iranian expat types, which I've debated a couple on your show before, because I always am a little bit more forgiving to them when they say something like, you know, it's just how brutally repressive the mullah and the ayatollah's regime is and how they want to liberate the people. But not one of them have jumped off board since Donald Trump has essentially announced total war against the civilian population. And here again, Ben repeats, send them back to the Stone Age. I'm sorry, did women have liberation in the Stone Age? Is that when everyone gets to take their burqas off?
I said that earlier. But Dave, I don't mind the debate, but I said it earlier.
Does that lead to
right? I know,
but and that leads
electricity.
Right.
That has nothing to do with the women's
yes, I understand.
rights.
Yeah, but sorry, hang on. I'm sorry.
We said we're not going to interrupt.
Let me just say on that point, Ben.
Well, that's war against the civilian population.
Well, Dave, what Ben is doing is what I've noticed a lot of people on the right have been doing, who are still very pro-Trump in this war, is you're translating what Trump apparently meant when he said we're going to bomb you back to the Stone Ages. You have decided it means no electricity because it's the only way you can really justify it, right?
Piers,
and
which
so
I've been talking Donald Trump
and I would say, Ben, I would say this: when you said victory, that's why it's interesting to get you to clarify what victory is. When you said it, you know, it's stopping the Iranians from developing a nuclear weapon, a dirty bomb. But that's what we were told had been achieved last summer. At the end of the 12-day war, Trump literally said that. We have stopped them developing a nuclear weapon. Mission accomplished. Here we are, less than a year later, 9 months later, and we're being told that victory will be if the United States and Israel stop the Iranians developing a nuclear weapon. But what's happened in 9 months?
Piers, great question. You have 60% enriched uranium that we know about that they still have. That's part of what we want to get out of the country. That is just taking data and looking at it and then saying, is this still a threat? How quickly can you get 60% to where it's military grade, to where you can get a dirty bomb? It's really damn close. So the president made another calculus here and said, okay, we hit those two facilities. They didn't stop what they were doing. They still have it way too close to military grade where they can do a dirty bomb. We know their intent is to kill innocent people and get a dirty bomb. They've said it over and over again. So therefore, because of that information, we are going to go in yet again, and we're going to make sure that America is safe.
So
and the rest of the world is safe.
All right, so Ben, do you accept that if the Americans and Israelis do not get the enriched uranium out of Iran, this is not victory, it is a failure, the war will have been lost?
I think there's two ways you can look at that. And again, this is coming from a military mindset. Number one is I talk to people in the military, they say, look, if they can't access it, right? If we bomb it in and we push it in and they can't access it anymore, that could be considered a victory from a military standpoint perspective. And again, this is way above my pay grade. That's why I ask other people questions that are experts. Would we love to get it out? Yes. But if we can't get it out and they can't get it out, that can be a victory. It depends on where it is. It depends on how much we bombed it. It depends on how secure it is if it stays in the ground there. So I don't say it's only one or the other, success or failure. It depends on the information on the ground. And if it is in a place where they're like, no one's going to be able to get to this, we can't get to it, neither can they, it's now unusable, that's a success as well. But I'd love to get it out of there. Yes, I don't like Iranians having anything close to it or having it in their backyard.
The problem is,